This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 459 for Wednesday, January 11th, 2023. It's my mom's birthday today, so happy birthday, Mom. She doesn't listen to this, so it doesn't really matter, but I did call her today and talk to her for a very brief minute. Cell reception was terrible, so I will have to call her after I record, and we're doing a family dinner thing on the Friday, so that's all happening this week. And before I get into the guest this week, I'm sure you're familiar with the chuckle. I want to say a big thank you to our patrons. It is the top of the month and the top of the year. And this is a show that I could not do without the patrons. You all support this project, and I truly appreciate it. There are 27 of you, as we will talk about later in the show. If you want to support the show, if you think that it's a good podcast and you'd like to help us keep recording and keep producing the show, check out patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. There's lots of benefits outlined there, and I hope to provide more in the future. We're going to be doing some new stuff this year with the show, just on the back end. So people in the Discord, in the community that are already supporting will get more information about that as we get closer to. But this week, as we often do at the start of the month or the start of the first recording of the month, Stephen ESC is back. You can find Stephen ESC on all the social media that matters, and of course on Twitch, where he streams from the Citadel with me more often than not. Although you've had a couple of other things that you've been streaming lately on Twitch too, right?
Yes, it's been work's been busy, so it's kind of thrown things off a little bit. But I have my own single player world called Shardia that I've been playing on. But I also have done Portal. Portal 1 has been the last two streams because I've been looking to. I have played it already, but I've been looking to play Portal 2, and it's been a while, so I wanted to kind of get myself reacquainted with the mechanics and the game, and my sons and other people I've talked to are excited for me to play Portal 2 because I just keep hearing that it's that much better than the first one, which is pretty amazing because the first one's pretty impressive.
I played but did not finish Portal 2, and it wasn't for enjoying it. Like I just didn't have time at the time. I was still doing a lot of freelance art, and just you only have so much time to play video games. And
yeah.
And so I never did finish it. But it's the mechanics are very different in a good way. Like they are the same, but they add to it, and it becomes much more complicated. Which I was saying something because I remember doing the first Portal on my own, and going like, wow, okay, this is mind bending.
Yeah, it's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, it's a great concept and kind of a nerd culture meme at this point.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
The cake is a lie.
Yeah, exactly.
I now know what the cake is a lie means.
We are welcoming you into, I think you said your third year starting now on the Citadel Cafe?
Exactly. So it's not that I want to step on your mom's birthday at all, but yeah, this is a sort of an anniversary for me on the Citadel Cafe because I've been now officially co-host for 2 years. This will be just starting into the third year. Time
flies, man. When you mentioned that just briefly before we started recording, I was like, no, it hasn't been that long, has it? But then I think about the fact that the show is like, well, it was 2011. So now we're coming up on 12 years this fall. This is our 12th year, I guess. And
that's
so
crazy.
Yeah, and then so I think about that, and I think about the different people that were co-hosts and regular co-hosts. Like for the longest time, it was just myself, Chad, and Peyton. Like consistently, it was the three of us every single week. And then they started having kids, and that started to go all over the place. And then have other people have come in and gone as their business and family lives have had to increase and all that kind of stuff. And then of course we had 3 years. I say have. Are continuing to deal with. I really pet peeve of mine, people that talk about the pandemic like it's over.
Yeah.
Anyway, during these last 3 years of pandemic-ness, time has also just been a complete smoosh. Like it's just
what a blur.
You think about something in 2020, you're like, that was last year. Like, nope, that was 3 years ago. Like,
well, I feel like you just had the 10-year anniversary of the show, and to think that was not last year, but the year before that seems wrong somehow.
Yep. Yep. And not to mention the fact that recording frequency in 2022 was actually down considerably just with scheduling challenges and me being busy, but then also life stuff happening with other co-hosts like home changes and job
Mm.
changes and family increasing in size, all that kind of stuff, which is all like good things are happening, but it makes your life very busy and it makes it very hard to
Mm.
sit down and do a podcast regularly when, important things are demanding your time. And so
Yeah,
as a
exactly.
result, on average, I think Citadel Cafe recorded once or twice a month over the course of 2022.
Mm.
It felt like more to me, but it wasn't. It's because I have another weekly show that we absolutely do not miss that I feel like it has a false impression in my head about how often the Citadel Cafe recorded. So my goal this year is to try to increase that back to regular kind of weekly standards. Although to
Nice.
my point earlier about people that support on Patreon, it's a per episode thing. So if we only do 2 episodes in a month, then that's all you're supporting. You're not charged on a monthly basis. It's people support on a per episode basis. So one of my favorite things about that system on Patreon is that if something happens and we have to cancel the show for any good reason, then there's nothing happens. Like you don't get a show as a patron and you don't pay for a thing that doesn't exist and all that kind of stuff, which is
Yeah,
great.
it's a beautiful thing.
So speaking of the year ahead, you
Hmm.
I think you gifted yourself a Christmas present that you wanted to
I
talk about.
did, yeah. So we talked about it briefly on the Christmas special of things I might do, and I took the Christmas money I got and I bought myself the Cineplex Cineclub annual membership. So my family and I had been kind of in this a fairly routine movie, I guess, period where we would go, if not every month, once every second month to go see like How to Train Your Dragon 3. The Marvel movies were coming out. We saw Into the Spider-Verse, like the first one. I forget what the title of it was, but we had this rhythm going. And then as soon as everything shut down, that was like the big entertainment thing that I missed. And so yeah, totally treated myself. And so I've got a looking forward to a year of movies ahead.
So just so we're clear, that's where you prepay to be
Yes.
part of the club, and then you have the ability to see what, 1, 2 movies a month.
Well, you get a ticket per month at the basically for $10 as opposed to I forget what the 12 or $13.
Right. It's a discounted. You're getting a discount per ticket because you're buying so many at once.
Exactly. Yeah. Although I do wish there was a bit more of a discount when you buy the annual membership versus the monthly membership, just as a bit of an incentive to get the money.
Oh yeah, no, that would make more sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but they do give you 1,500. I'm not paid by Cineplex, just so everybody knows. It's just I like the movie, so but you do get 1,500 points as well when you buy the annual membership. And with now that I think about it, that's the equivalent of a ticket. So it's almost like you buy 12, you get a 13th, you get a baker's dozen of tickets. So
And as far as I know, there are no small movie houses around here, so you go to Cineplex or you don't go.
basically,
There's
yeah, it
no
used to
other
be
place to
different, but
go.
that's yeah. I've already. I mean, I used my first ticket already. Went to see Wakanda Forever.
Nice.
Yeah, it came out in November, but it basically felt like we squeaked in seeing it before it left the theaters because I think it comes out in Disney Plus on February 1st, right? And so yeah, I was happy to see it on the big screen, but I had unfortunately a bit of a bad headache, so I'm definitely going to give it another viewing before we inevitably talk about it on the show.
So you didn't go see it, or you did?
I did, yeah. We went to see it. I'm trying to remember, it was either just at the end of December or just the beginning of January. I guess that's not super important, but I'd bought the tickets online and then woke up the next morning with a splitting headache. So this is fantastic. It
So
was still quite good. I mean, the performances were excellent. We won't get into it too much, but I mean, if anybody here watches the Golden Globes or at least follows the news, I mean, Angela Bassett won for her performance in Wakanda Forever. So
nice.
yeah, there's chit chat about it, and then I saw it. I'm like, oh my goodness, that was so good. Either way, we'll talk more about that next month.
Yeah, that was on my list to go see in the theater, but I doubt it's going to happen. Although, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
is it still in the theater now?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, if people are winning
Check it out
awards,
after the
it might
show.
still be because they often do that. If people start
True.
winning things, they kind of leave it go for a little bit longer. I know that I was skillfully avoiding social media spoilers, but that seemed to have died down now. I don't see any memes or clips or people talking about how good this moment was from Wakanda
Yeah.
Forever. I don't see that anymore, so that part is at least good. I avoided all that, but there's a really good chance, considering that we're less than a month away from it releasing on Disney Plus, that I'm probably just going to watch it in 4K at home.
Yeah. But I've got basically my year sort of planned out, and I'm on some level hoping that I wouldn't find something for every month, because I thought, you know what, I'll use this opportunity to go see the things like Ant-Man and the Wasp and Dungeons and Dragons with my family. And then I was hoping there might be like nothing really I wanted to see that I knew of anyway in April. And then I could just kind of look at the list and say, well, that's normally not something I would see on a big screen, but it looks really interesting. So I'm going to go treat myself to experience that I wouldn't normally get. But I feel like I got something for almost every month. There's a couple of things in there for like in the August to October kind of range where there's really not a bunch new coming out, probably because everybody's going back to school and stuff. But I mean, we're going to put the full list of the movies up in the show notes afterwards. But I mean, the big ones are things I'll go to see my family with, like the Marvel movies like Ant-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, and the Marvels. But, you know, Super Mario Bros. And things like that as well. So there's a handful of things in the list that I put there just as a kind of a placeholder because there wasn't much in the month. But I'm looking forward to it. I think going to see the movies is, it's a highlight of the month for me.
So when I was looking over the list, you know, a few things stuck out to me, like the Super Mario Brothers movie. I'm interested in that. I don't know if I'd go to see it in theater right away, but like that's it. I guess theater, I'd wait to see whether people think it's good. You know, if it's okay, I'll wait for a home video. But then there's some movies where you just know, like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. They're not my favorite Marvel movies, but they're still a spectacle. Like they're still really pretty.
They're still a
they're
big screen,
very
experience.
colorful. Yeah, like super colorful. And I also, part of me with the Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I'm trying to separate James Gunn as a director and James Gunn as the head of DCU. And just on one hand, was like, yeah, okay, respect. Not my favorites, but like they're good. And then the DCEU stuff is like, you've got to prove yourself because it looks like you're making some mistakes right now. So yeah, I don't, I mean, I know nothing obviously from the inside, but you know, from the outside, not a lot of people are happy right now with the state of DC in the theaters. So we'll have to see. I mean, there's nothing you can do but wait. Everything out there right now is speculation because there's no concrete information. One thing that I did notice was missing from the nerddom, only because I saw the trailer just briefly before Christmas, is Transformers Rise of the Beasts comes out in June.
Oh, right.
I don't expect that to be in theaters for a really long time, but if you're shy for something in August, you might be able to snag that in the theaters. And that's probably, I'm not saying it's going to be Shakespeare, but I'm saying that on the big screen, it's probably going to be fun. Lots of explosions.
I grew up with giant robots that fight each other. I'm excited to see giant robots that fight each other on the big screen.
I forgive a lot for those movies, but I think the thing for me was, especially the cinematic stuff. I went with my sister one time. I think she saw the first one on home video, the first Michael Bay Transformers movie. Missed the next two because they were not great. And then it was the one, I think it was maybe it was the third one she went. Anyway, it was Megatron and Optimus Prime having a fight in like downtown Chicago or something like that. I think that was the third one. And Andrea was just like, this is ridiculously cool.
Yeah.
Like they nailed a lot of the lines and the action, and everything was a lot clearer in the third one visually. They did a lot of wide shots where you could really see the robots like fist fighting like people, as opposed to like these close-ups of just like moving gears. And so she really enjoyed them. So I've actually been tempted to rewatch some of them because of that trailer that I watched at least twice. YouTube is just throwing me all these like, here's this cool fight scene from this Bumblebee moment, or this, so you got all these little like 10 minutes. Yeah, exactly. These 10 little 10-minute clips of like fight scenes. So like the best scenes from these movies. And you're just like, I could probably go back and watch these. I know what they are. And I think that's part of the thing about going back to watching them is that you know what to expect. But
I guess before we go on, one thing I'm really excited about for this one is it's not a Michael Bay picture.
Yes. Yeah.
He might be executive producer. I think I saw his name in the mix, but it's got a different director. Bumblebee kind of looks like the style of Bumblebee from the recent Bumblebee movie. And when they had Optimus Prime drive by in the trailer, he's old school Optimus Prime, like the flat-faced.
It's like a Mack truck.
I forget which model. I
can't remember the model either. But yeah, it's not a GMC contract that has to be like one of their 18-wheelers. It's a different. It's the classic model.
It seems truer thus far. Visually, seems truer to the original. So I'm surprised that I missed it. That is one I want to see in the big screen.
Moving on to listener email, we have a message from Smurf588, one of our Bean Counter patrons, regarding old episodes. Joel and Stephen, Happy New Year to you. I have now binge listened to every episode of the Citadel Cafe. I found it very interesting to hear your thoughts and comments on various movie plots and comparing them to what actually happened. One example was working out who Rey's parents were in The Force Awakens. It was interesting to listen to the speculation and the change of ideas as the movies were released. I was wondering if there are any movie outcomes that you were expecting or predicting which didn't quite happen, and did this make the movie better because it was unpredictable, or were you disappointed? Keep up the great podcast. It's a staple of my weekly audio diet. Many thanks, Smurf588. Well, thanks, Smurf, for the email. Very, very cool idea and discussion. I will piggyback off of the Rey being Palpatine's granddaughter bomb that was dropped in, I think it was the final one, The Rise of Skywalker, is when they revealed that.
Yeah.
And it's not where I thought they were going to go with their backstory. I don't hate it, but I didn't feel like it was all that original. It kind of felt like a regurgitation of the Skywalker family tree. You know, like where you got the big bad, and then the hero is like somehow related to the big bad, with Vader and his son Luke. But I feel like because of the whole grandfather thing, it felt like it was just an excuse to get Palpatine back in the mix, and they completely glazed over her parents, which it just, I mean, I get it. They wouldn't have been important, but I feel like the trick there is like, if you want to mirror the Skywalker saga or mirror the Luke Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker relationship, then it should be Rey and her parents that are linked mysteriously, not her grandparents. Cause like, of course no one knows who her grandfather is because like he's old and dead. Like it didn't make any sense. Anyway, they skipped over her parents entirely, which didn't really fit well with me. And I thought, until they revealed how weird and awful he was in the second film, Snoke as an idea was a more interesting villain because he was Sith, he was an alien. There just seemed to be more going on there in The Force Awakens in terms of potential, right?
And I like the fact that there was a new menace.
Yeah.
So instead of going in the third movie, basically going, well, let's go, as you said, a regurgitation, let's go sort of back to where we were before. It just felt like it was moving in. It felt a bit more ominous because it was a new threat on the horizon.
And they did a pretty good job visually of separating Snoke from Palpatine. Like, yes, he's this withered old kind of powerful wizard looking guy, but that's all Sith when they're at that level. But then instead of being all dark cloaks and shadows, he was like gold robe, bright red throne room. Like it was very showy, right? And I thought if they had like a, not charismatic, but like flamboyant in terms of flaunting power as a Sith villain, that would be very different than like the Palpatine skulking around in the shadows for years. So, but they didn't ultimately go that way. And as soon as Snoke showed up, they cut him in half. And it's like, okay, well, that's the end of that. Cool scene, but like not really what I was hoping was going to happen. And as far as those theories go, my favorite theory was that Rey was the daughter of Luke Skywalker and Mara Jade. Jade is a character from, I believe, now defunct novels that are not part of the canon. But Mara Jade was a redhead, force sensitive, kind of like a mix between like a Jedi and Han Solo. She was badass. Nice. And a lot of female Star Wars fans that read the books really liked Mara Jade, and thought that was really, really cool. I think she was part of the Timothy Zahn trilogy, but I'm not entirely sure, which is where Thrawn comes from. But I don't know if she's made an appearance in the cartoons. I don't think so. Anyway, that was a cool theory, because then you could still have like this estranged relationship with Luke Skywalker as her father, because Luke doesn't even know he has a kid. Right? Because it's not like Mara Jade and Luke were like a fling thing, not like a real, like long-standing relationship. As far as I remember, it's been 20 years since I've read the books. But anyway, that was a good theory for me. How did you feel about the whole Rey Palpatine thing when that was revealed?
It made me roll my eyes a little bit. I think The third movie, as a standalone movie, not compared to the other two, I enjoyed it. It was a fun ride, but I guess episodes 7 and 9 were too much of a throwback and repetition of things that happened in the original three. Just like, okay, we've got a Death Star, but it's bigger now, and we're gonna shoot through a planet. Like, it just felt like it was, we need to get the fans in here, so we're going to redo that everything that was done and just make it bigger. So it's just like you were saying, it just felt like it was too much of a mirror of what had happened already. Like, just I would have preferred it to be um its own storyline with Easter eggs throughout, but not such a huge throwback to the original. So it was, as a standalone, I enjoyed it, but it did make me roll my eyes when he was revealed to be her Force lineage.
So the other big one for me that I saw coming, and unfortunately was disappointing, as disappointing as it was predictable, was watching the series finales of, or I should say, the final seasons of Game of Thrones, and it was otherwise an unpredictable show. And when
Yeah.
you started being able to predict what was going on, you're like, what is going on with the show? Because it used to be, I have no idea who's going to live or die horribly in the next 45 minutes. And you just feel it undermine everything that they had set up and done over the first 6 seasons to build up certain characters. And when those characters start doing things that are really untrue to what they've established, or that's not something I think that Martin likes to do with his characters. Is just, there is no hero. Everybody is just shitty. And the problem with that is that not all people are shitty. And so when you have a good person that's a fan of the show, they want a good person to latch onto and see if that good person can make it through. Maybe not perfectly, but they still have to at least make some moral decisions and get somewhere. And I mean, the closest that you get is John, but even then, the series of decisions that he makes are not necessarily smart ones, right? So you're just like, really, again? Like, what did you not learn last time? Like, that kind of stuff. And so I didn't like that at all, especially with the fall of Daenerys and all that kind of stuff. It just felt like, well, for all the pomp and circumstance of 7 seasons of saying I'm not my father, yeah, you are. Like, it felt like a really cheap way out for the end of Game of Thrones. Now, and you've watched it more recently than I did. Did you feel the last couple seasons that were the same?
I didn't care for the 7th season as much, but I didn't have the same level of feelings as everyone else, because we were getting them out from the library, and we were able to just basically watch an episode almost every night or every second night kind of thing, all the way through all 7 seasons. So we didn't have this 6-year commitment and 6-year relationship with the show that was just butchered in the 7th. Like, for me, it was, I think it was during season 7, I think I might have been talking to Alistair or somebody else, that I learned the expression plot armor. Like, it felt like all of the main characters had plot armor in season 7, except for Daenerys. I felt like they made her almost like they sort of flipped her to turn. I don't know. I don't want to use the word psycho, but they just kind of made her like almost go neurotic, just because they felt like that's how the story should have her go, as opposed to it didn't feel like it was as gradual as I felt like it should have been. So I wasn't totally disappointed, but I was surprised by how many people made it to the end of that season.
So the other one that I think sticks out for me is the end of the third phase of the MCU, but Endgame, the end of Endgame, with, spoilers for people, the death of Tony Stark, and then not death, but like the exit of Steve Rogers from any kind of future MCU current storyline, right? And so it's not a death, but it's still a departure. And while I think they're excellent endings, right? Like, I think that movie suffers if Iron Man doesn't die, right? That's not a complete arc for him. You know, that movie suffers if Out of Water Cap doesn't get back to the time that he's happy with and get the girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that those are good choices for those characters and good endings, but still sad on 2 levels. One, you're sad that these characters are leaving, and you're sad about, like, that they have to say goodbye to all of their friends and all that they've done, and that of course everybody else is saying goodbye to Tony because Tony's gone. That kind of stuff is hard. But then you also have the experience as a fan of watching Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans play these characters, beloved by millions, and you're not going to get that anymore either. Unless there's a flashback, but I doubt it. Like this, I would imagine for other reasons too, those actors are probably wanting to move on with their career and stuff like that. So I found that was a sad thing. However, I did not see it coming. Maybe during the movie, you might think like, okay, like during the battle, you think, oh crap, he's not going to survive this. But you don't think like mid end game, Tony's not going to make it, right? You only realize it the moment he puts the glove on at the end. You're like, uh-oh, yeah. Don't do it.
I honestly wasn't even really sure, because who knows what this nanobot suit is capable of. Like, it's just, it's basically his watch, and he touches it and it's becomes whatever he wants it to be. So I have had no idea whether he had kind of built this next version of the Iron Man suit to be able to withstand something. But now that I'm saying it out loud, it's like, if you've never had the power of all the crystals to snap, you would never know what the threshold would be required for a suit like that. But I honestly, I was not disappointed from like you said, an arc completion standpoint, but I was disappointed that the characters are no longer in it, because I feel like I don't recall if they're the two earliest heroes in the movies. I mean, I know the Hulk was first, which is
technically
not always counted.
Yeah, but if you look at the modern version of the MCU, Iron Man was first. I want to say Thor was the next standalone movie, and then the first Avenger came out.
Right, it was Thor, because that was, I think Thor was the same year, and that's when Coulson said there was an anomaly or something in the desert that they had to go check out, and that was Hammer.
Yeah, that's how it all went. And I think right after those three, I think that then it was Avengers. Like, I think that was the setup. So 1, 2, 3, and then 4, because there was no other movies for the other characters. Iron Man 2 might have come out before Avengers, but I don't think so. I'm not entirely sure. It's funny, I don't remember. But yeah, that's an example of me not really predicting how it was going to end exactly. And then having it sit in a way that was like, you understand that it's good, but it feels bad. I felt that way about the whole movie. I remember riding in the car home with Peyton, talking about the film, and both of us just kind of sitting there going like, that was amazing. Why do I feel like shit? And it's because it's over, right? It's because it's such an ending to those chapters that you're like, well, 1, that was fantastic. 2, that was the end. That sucks, because like, they're not like, are they going to make any more? And we all knew like there was another Ant-Man movie announced, or you knew that Guardians of the Galaxy was going to have another one come out or something like that. But you're like, but that's not this story. That's not Cap, Iron Man, Thor, and the gang. Like, this is over. We got to move on. And, then we had to think, all right, well, we know they're making more Spider-Man. So we kind of had stuff to look forward to, but it wasn't at that level. So we'll have to see what comes down the tubes with more MCU. But thanks very much, Smurf, for the
great question.
For the email. Really, really cool. Yeah, no, it's that got in right before the show. Actually, I saw that last minute. It's like, oh, hey, we have an email.
Nice.
Very, very cool. More of those, please. If you'd like to email the show, send it into the Citadel Cafe at gmail.com. Moving on to the main chat, we're going to be talking about some Star Wars stuff. Surprise. But I have a quick mention. And I'll get into more detail about this next week, because I want to finish the series. But I will say, I am watching and enjoying immensely Jack Ryan season 3. I've liked the first 2 seasons, so it's no surprise that John Krasinski is kicking butt in the 3rd season. High acting bar across the board.
Nice.
Great plot. Mirrors a little bit of real life. There's a game of chess, we'll say, between Russia and the U.S. as Russia appears to be maneuvering a nuclear warhead around and is manipulating in the show, the Czech Republic. Sound familiar to anybody in terms of world conflict right now? So the whole thing has some interesting insights about destabilization in the Eastern European countries, and It's well written, it's well acted, and there's even some good action. So I will talk about that in its entirety next week when I can talk about details without spoiling it for anybody. It only just came out a few days ago. So if you are into spy stuff, CIA stuff, check out Jack Ryan. Season 1 and 2 are available now, and then season 3, I think, is all out. I think they did like a binge dump. It wasn't like a week-to-week thing. So
oh, nice.
you
That
can
was
watch
going to
it.
be my question.
Yeah, you can watch it all at once. I've had to pace myself. At the end of every episode, I think, ooh, I can watch one more. And I think, nope. Because then tomorrow, I'm not going to have anything to watch over dinner if I finish this too soon. So it's nice for the last week or so to have just a no think situation at dinner time. I just sit down after I'm done dinner and hit play on one episode and then just kind of go from there. So highly recommended.
I admire your restraint. I've got no restraint when it comes to things like that.
Moving on, we are going to talk about The Bad Batch, and I will hold back because I have seen the first season and I've just started watching season 2. It premiered on February 4th, I believe, about a week ago. But you have just started, I believe, on my recommendation, which is funny considering when I first started watching the show, I didn't like it. So I'm curious now to see what your first impressions are getting into The Bad Batch for the first time.
Story-wise, I'm actually liking it. It's making me realize I have you and I chatted about this at the gym the other day, but I have some Star Wars homework to do. Because you're like, we were chatting about where this fits in, and I was like, I'm pretty sure it happens here. And then and then you said, well, you've seen the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, right? And I said, no, because I haven't finished the 3 prequels. And he's like, what? And he's like, yeah. So either way, so I've got some homework to do, but from what I understand, this fits in. It's between movie 2 and movie 3. I've only seen the first 4 episodes, and Fennec Shand just showed up. So it feels like it's pre-Mandalorian, but I can't.
It's absolutely pre-Mandalorian.
Okay.
This is set during the events of the 3rd film of Revenge of the Sith.
So this happens during.
Well, so the whole series would start before and kind of end after, but during the Bad Batch, the events of Revenge of the Sith take place, right?
Gotcha.
So you're kind of seeing a before and then an after, which is very interesting. I'm mincing my memory as to whether that happened during season 7 of Clone Wars, which is how Bad Batch was introduced. But this is a spin-off Clone Wars series. So,
right.
But as far as I can remember, season 1 happens roughly around the same time as Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
Boba Fett and Mandalorian happen after Return of the Jedi. So like 20 years later.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I gotcha.
So some of these bounty hunters have been around for a while, and that's why people get so excited when they get into these like inserted miniseries that are following characters that are not part of the Skywalker saga, because what they can do is they can pull bit characters that kind of show up like Fennec Shand and just be like, let's just give them a decent role in the show, because they don't have anything main plot wise to worry about, so they can kind of play around with it, which is nice. It's funny Easter eggs for people that know where these characters are from, right?
No, it's good. So I mean, I guess to go back to the question, I got myself sidetracked, is I am enjoying it. It started off saying, talking about the Clone Wars and how that sort of unfolded a little bit, which made me realize I have that homework to go and do, and maybe not watch. I think you said, was it 7 seasons? Was it of Clone Wars?
It is 7 seasons, but you can either go online and find character arcs and like find like episodes, like the best key moments for like Ahsoka or for Rex or like for characters that you might want to follow. Or you can just like, I want to say even the first 2 to 3 seasons of the Clone Wars, because it was aimed at such young viewers, you can have that on while you do other stuff, right?
Right.
And then when it starts to get good is when you'll start to like be distracted enough by the TV that you stop whatever it is that you're doing. Like you're no longer drying the dishes, you're actually watching the television, like that kind of stuff.
Okay. I find with shows where the animation leaves me going, it bothers me for the first little bit, but then it just sort of becomes part of the show you're watching. Like you know that's what it's going to be like, so your brain stops complaining about it in the in your background or your mental background. But I find the walking stiff, especially when they're walking downstairs and stuff. It just looks very sort of jerky and unnatural, and I find the mouths look like they're rendered oddly, where they don't look like they're rendered all the way back, and so some angles that just there are things that bother me about it, stylistically. But then at the same time, some of the eye expressions and like just the subtle eyebrow moves and looks to the side. I feel like they nailed some of the expressions really well. So it's almost a shame that the rendering doesn't feel like it matches sometimes. So far I'm not completely enamored by that. I think the way the characters look, I feel like I'm contradicting myself, but like animation rendering not great, but in terms of like the character designs, I think they're pretty cool.
So when you say rendering, do you mean modeling or do you mean like the textures and stuff?
Um,
Because if you're talking about the modeling, I know what you mean. That they're fairly limited.
yeah, maybe I'm mixing the words up.
So for me, the rendering would be like the lighting, the atmosphere, the textures. I find that spot on.
Yeah, fair enough. And actually, thank you, maybe thank you for clarifying, because one of the things I do like is when they do close-ups of people's faces. Sometimes is like the sometimes the faces or parts of their faces are so angular it's almost a sharp edge to a jawline, which
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I'm a huge fan of. But when they get really close and the lights sort of dim or kind of almost moonlight type light, it almost looks like their skin has this like a brush stroke quality to it. They look like there are lines in it, and it looks like it. You're right. I mean, they look like they're rendered well. They're high quality rendering. It's more the movement and and maybe the modeling. Would be the word I was looking for. It's just there's something that seems like in the joints. They look like they're just single points where the forearm joins the upper arm, as opposed to being the way, like, it doesn't feel like it has a true skeleton underneath it. It just looks like we have a line for the forearm and there's a ball where the elbow is, and it just bends that way. It goes narrow at the elbow, which looks odd to me.
Yeah. So some of that, I mean, I agree with you. It's not great. But I think unfortunately they were kind of stuck with the established design of the Clone Wars because it's going to be
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and that means that that's at least 10 years old, right? Because there was 7 seasons of the Clone Wars, and season 7 didn't come out right away. That was like 3 or 4 years later. So I don't remember when the first episode of the Clone Wars came out, but it was a long time ago.
Mm.
And so you're stuck with like those design aesthetics, but the rendering in terms of the lighting and the execution and the textures, where you're talking about, where you can actually see the hand painted textures, like specifically any male characters that have a beard, you can see the brushstrokes of where they attached the beard in some cases. Not if it's a big beard. If it's a big beard, then it's modeled, right? It's actually a physical 3D model that's on the character's face. But if it's just like scruff or like mustache or some sort of pattern, any kind of like skin markings, like aliens have got like stripes or, little patterns and things. They're usually hand painted on by the texture artist. And that has that brushstroke level of quality, which I think softens the 3D models, which are, as you said, very harsh and
Yeah.
not the best, but like it's what they had at the time. And I think when you're making a TV show for network television, which was originally what the Clone Wars was for, economics are your friend, right? Like you
Yeah,
want
fair
that
enough.
thing to be very, very easy to animate and very, very easy to model and stuff like that when you have to add new characters every week. Different story when it's being made for Disney Plus years later. But then if it's in the same universe, you kind of want to go in that realm. There are other
Yeah.
shows like Rebels where it was designed and produced later, and the character models are softer. They still have a Clone Wars vibe to them, but they're definitely softer in Rebels, and it helps. It makes it feel like
Okay.
more of a modern show. So there's stuff like that that's nice. But yeah, I agree with the assessment of the visuals. Like it's got a push and pull. Like you're kind of like, wow, this is kind of bugging
Yeah.
me. But then after a while, you're like, well, you start to forgive it because there's other things that they do. And then Star Wars is just such a pretty universe anyway, right? Like between the ships and lasers and there's all these bright shiny things that you're like, woo, and then you completely forget
Yeah.
about the dumb models. You're like, ooh, that's a cool ship, and your brain is off in some other way.
Yeah, but one of the things that you say that bright and shiny, but one of the things that I've always liked about Star Wars is the fact that, things look cool and, I feel like I'll put quote unquote bright and shiny, but the fact that everything's just kind of dirty and
Oh
gritty,
yes, yeah.
but still great looking. That's one of the things that I always liked about it. So it's, I guess, not to get too off topic, but that's one of the things that, of course, bugged me and us so much about the bright and shiny kids in the Book of Boba Fett. It's like didn't fit in the Star Wars world.
Yeah, when I say bright and shiny, I meant more like the kind of things that make Star Wars fans light up,
Yeah,
regardless of
yeah,
what it looks like. Like if it's something that looks like a Millennium Falcon or if it's a Corellian
right.
crater, people just kind of like they whistle and point at the screen and go, "Hey, I know that."
Yeah,
Like
fair enough. Fair
I've
enough.
seen that before. I've seen that
Yeah.
before. So how do you feel about the plot so far?
I think the premise is pretty interesting in the sense that, like, the fact that they are clones, but intentionally made to be the quote unquote Bad Batch. They've been altered from the standard clone to have special traits, and I thought that was cool. And I think the main characters, the Hunter, Wrecker, Tech, Cutter, and Crosshair, and then of course Omega. We find out soon into the season one. I like them, but there's part of me that's also bugged. They're most like stereotypical versions of all of those characters, and I guess you could say, of course, they are because they've been tweaked to be each of those, each of those traits specifically. But it just feels like it's so like Tech. I find him pretty cool, but his delivery is always exactly the same, and it's just you get exactly what you would expect from a character called Tech. Cutter, I think Hunter's kind of your neutral dude, so he's sort of their boss, or like the leader of the crew. Seems the most level-headed and the most, I guess, most well-rounded out of all of them. But I find Cutter to be, I think, the most interesting because he's not even really, he's not a genetically altered clone. He's actually he's a regular who had his inhibitor chip damaged. But I mean, I'm just sorry getting to the details, but I find all of these little things pretty interesting. I even love the fact that the 5 main Bad Batch characters are all voiced by the same actor. that was pretty fun. I mean, I like D. Bradley Baker. I knew him as the voice of Appa and Momo from Avatar: The Last Airbender. And there's a couple of other things we watch as a family where, if you look at the credits, D has been basically the voice of the non-speaking characters. That's how I knew him first and foremost. So it's pretty cool to actually see him kind of voice act people now, and then he just like, I'm just gonna just lay down 5 of them all in the same show and keep them distinct and different.
And he's been the voice of the clones for all the Clone Wars too, right? So
oh geez,
any of the individual clones that are talking with Kenobi or Skywalker or anybody else, he does all the voices for it. And I mean, nice. I'm sure through any kind of like digital manipulation, I mean, I'm not sure how many different commands he's had to read out, where they just have, random helmeted trooper saying, yes, sir, like all that kind of stuff is all in the background as well. But it makes sense because they're all clones. So they're all going to sound exactly the same, right?
True. Yeah. But so far, the voice acting I found pretty good. I've liked them all except for the Omega character. I shouldn't say like, I have nothing against the actor Michelle Ang's performance, but I just find that her voice is too old for how young Omega looks.
And I think they handle that. It gets better in terms of like, okay. Yeah, I think from what I can tell, and this is kind of like a hindsight is 2020, and this is not a spoiler, but I feel like because of what Omega is and how she matures, I think that she's really young when you first meet her emotionally, but because of the experiences in the show and probably because of feedback from fans and stuff, they kind of accelerated a bit. And so she's still like the kid because I mean, she's young. And that's to help communicate the different, the morals in the story for the young viewers and stuff like that.
Right, fair enough.
But they do a good job with bringing her up to speed because she has to deal with these clones who are adults and who are at war, like all the time.
Yeah.
They don't do kid stuff, right? And so she has to kind of grow up real fast. And I think that they handle that. Pretty well. That's
good to know. I mean, her storyline is one that I've been curious about. I really wanted to see how it played out because, I mean, right now they just, after 4 episodes, they just have her as like you said, the kid of the group who's always doing the thing you don't want them to do to get into trouble. And then they've had to rescue her more than once already within 4 episodes. It's like, all right, come on. I'm ready. I'm enjoying it, but I'm ready for the point where they sort of, as the team, figure stuff out a little bit so they can move past this. It feels like episodic what do you call it? Groundhog Day, almost like it's just feels like, yep, we did this last episode, but we're doing it again. Yep, we did this last episode, we're doing it again.
And about halfway through, I could be wrong. At some point in the first season, it shifts from episodic to like long-term story. It still has episodic resolutions, but there's a larger plot that carries through, I want to say, the second half of the season.
Right.
And that's about where my turning point was as well. For, again, same thing. Like, you get Omega is like the kid that's always doing the kid thing. There's all these plot devices that you're very familiar with watching kids cartoons. But because of the other things in the show, you start to forgive those things. And I found for me, it started off, there's a lot of stuff that I was like, this is okay. But like, especially because I did not like the Bad Batch section of season 7 of Clone Wars, but then I had other people saying like, you really have to give the actual Bad Batch show a chance because it's better than that. And you will, I know you, Joel, and you will not be disappointed. So I was like, all right, well, because of that, kind of influence, I thought I'd give it a go. But I'm happy to say with season 2, and I'll keep this spoiler free just because I don't want to spoil anything for you. I've only seen 2 episodes. There are 3 available, but the third came out today. The first 2 episodes of season 2 are a 2-parter, and they deal directly with a little Easter egg from the Skywalker saga and events of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Has some really solid character motivation, though, which I thought was nice. Like, a really good example is Omega doing a kid thing? Yes. But her motivation for it is not kiddie. Her decision to do it when told not to was kiddie, but her motivation is really honest and heartwarming. And the other characters have to remedy the situation, not just in the moment, but then afterwards, emotionally, they all have to kind of reach an understanding. And I think that they have matured as far as the writing goes for the show, which is good. I'm not saying it's like an adult, like it's not aimed at adults. It's still aimed at kids. But for me, I thought it was a much better execution. And there's just some beautiful visuals, some great Easter egg moments. Like once you get to know the characters in season 1, even though there are still eye-rolly moments, there are still some character moments, especially if you're looking for like comic relief, and not like Lethal Weapon comic relief, like not necessarily jokey, but like funny, like smirky kind of action comedy. And Wrecker is really good at that. And there's some moments for Wrecker in the first episode or 2 that you're like, okay, that was worth it. Like that was
worth it.
So yeah, this is a long-winded setup for this one moment. You're like, okay, no, that was worth the last 5 minutes of them talking and setting this up. It's like that was fun. So stuff like that I think is interesting. But to go to your point earlier about the character stereotypes, like it's the Ninja Turtles. You've got Leonardo the leader, you've got Raph the big guy, you've got the party animal, you've got Donatello the nerd. Like it's all there. So it's not, and I agree with you, it's not breaking any kind of mold. You can even talk about like role reversals. Like April in the Ninja Turtles is the adult female that everybody has got kind of like a puppy love for, but she's taking care of the turtles. And then the reverse is happening in Bad Batch, where everybody's got this puppy love for Omega, but she's the kid. They have to take care of her. And they're not used to it. Like they're used to looking out for themselves and one another from a military kind of standpoint.
I did find that interesting though, because they're used to having everything taken care. Like the point I'm at, they're still trying to figure out how to adult properly, because they're used to having everything done for them. They're like, well, we're almost out of food. What do you mean we're almost out of food? Like, well, we brought some and we just can't go and get it anymore. And it was almost like, even though Wrecker as like such a stereotypical not smart dude, he's the dumb
big
muscle.
the big dumb guy. I wish it wasn't like that, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he, like if they had the big muscly, I mean I've seen that as well, where the big muscly guy ends up being a tech type character, which would be, I find that more interesting than a big dumb guy. But either way, when he wasn't able to get his food, he's like, what do you mean that's all I get? So it's kind of interesting to see that they're making them part of the first few episodes is them just learning how to, what do we have to do to get by. They've never had to do that before. So
I found the whole storyline about the inhibitor chip really interesting. Like that was where I was like, okay, like this is, It's a neat idea that there are
Hmm.
clones that manage to escape Order 66, right? And then you're dealing
Right.
with, I don't want to say it's not PTSD, but it's like when someone that's like a lifelong military veteran in real life is no longer in the military and they're trying to adjust to civilian life, right?
Right.
And now these guys are still doing military operations because they're freelancing and they're doing like little missions, and so it's there's still a lot of action. They're not like putting their feet up because there's still a lot of stuff happening. It's not like the Empire took over overnight. Like there's this cool insight in the show to see like these little droplets of how
Yeah.
the Empire establishes itself and becomes the Empire when it's just going from Order 66 to a very young Empire, right?
The little bits of manipulation and seediness that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the simple thing of saying your normal credits are no longer good, but you're able to turn them in for free for whatever they're called, the
Imperial
imperial
credits, yeah.
credits. Yeah, so that basically they remonetized the entire empire, and everyone's like, yeah, cool. So it's my $5 isn't valuable anymore. It doesn't worth anything anymore, but you'll give me $5 equivalent in that, which is worth something. Great, no harm, no law, no harm, no foul. It's just I can still go about my day, just a different currency. But they don't realize kind of the underlying seediness of it all. It's kind of interesting to see from the outside.
We are so used to the Empire as aggressive and shooting first and asking questions later and imprisoning people for just looking sideways and all
Yeah,
the things that are happening later in Star Wars. But early on, it's all the soft ploys, it's all the little manipulations and the um, weaseling their way into established governments,
yeah,
by offering protection even though the war's over. Why are you still stationed here? Like there's just all this kind of stuff to the point where, not in this series, so this isn't a spoiler, but in other series you'll see things like a fake front. So like you'll have imperial occupation and the idea that once the conflict is over, the imperial occupation will end and this planet will go back to its own independence. But then the Imperials hire mercenaries to continually threaten the planet so that the Imperials are quote unquote always needed.
mm,
Right. So
yeah,
stuff like that. And I always thought like that's really cool. It's so black and white by the time you get to A New Hope that it's just like bad guy versus good guys.
yeah.
And
Dressed in black, dressed in white.
yeah, exactly. Literally. Um, and yeah, so like I thought that was a cool thing. But anything that
Hmm.
you're looking forward to with the season one as it's going forward, like you have any place that you think it might be going?
I don't right now. It's because it's this. You just recommended to me, and I started watching it, so I don't really have a good sense of where these characters fit into the overall thing, which is why I said I have some homework to do. And I know we chatted about it a bit, but I feel like I need to experience that first, so I don't really know.
Mm.
It's really hard to say, but I mean, it's easy to say. Feel like they're going to become the good guys, but I don't think I don't even. I think we're going to get to a point maybe with the end of season one is that they're still trying to figure out where they fit in the entire picture. And I think that by the end of season one, we're going to learn probably like right now where I am, or I mean, it happens right away. But Crosshairs is sorry, I guess spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen any of it. But Crosshairs isn't with the five of them right now, so I feel like it might be halfway through the season we'll get some resolution on his character, or maybe that'll be the big thing at the end. But I feel like Omega's story will have some not necessarily full resolution, but it'll all come to kind of come together who she is and what her part is. At least crystallize it a little bit more than it is right now. It just only 4 episodes in, everything's still quite up in the air.
One of the things that I'll say that doesn't reveal anything is that one of the nice things about the show, because of the fresh empire and because of the new things, and all of those new situations, with, like you said, new banking information, new credits,
Mm-hmm.
new clamp down on smuggling that didn't have a clamp down before, like all that kind of stuff. It means that everyone in the Star Wars universe is having to pivot. Whether it's a
Yeah,
smuggler, whether it's a bar owner, whether it's someone that used to run weapons or someone that is the police force on a planet, like they all have to pivot. And one of the interesting things about that is that so do the Bad Batch, and which means it's really hard to predict where the show is going
yeah,
because they are reactive and they are reacting to how the rest of the universe or galaxy is reacting to the Empire kind of like taking hold. And so the Empire is taking hold, and then each individual kind of person in the Star Wars universe is reacting in their own way. And the Bad Batch is kind of like dealing with all of them because they're on the Outer Rim and they're just kind of going from place to place to place. And so they have to like pivot at every turn, and so it keeps it from being predictable, which I did like. There's there's some things, like you say, like character stereotypes. Like when a bad guy walks in the screen in a cartoon, you know it. There's no guessing, right? But that's fine. But stuff like how the main kind of Bad Batch crew react to a situation, you kind of know how that's going to happen. But what you don't know is what situation is going to be thrown at them next. Like that I found was at least more refreshing and interesting as the series went on. Moving on into the Internet Minute, which is, of course, brought to you by you. The Citadel Cafe is 100% listener supported. If you're getting value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will get you an invite to the member-only Discord server, which is shared with my personal Discord, and access to Barista Cut bonus audio sessions. Special thanks to Bean Counter patrons Cosmic and Smurf588. You've heard that name before this episode. Thanks so much for your support on this episode. We really appreciate it. Patron count is at 27. Steady on from the Holiday Roundtable in December. Our goal each time we sit down to record is to have at least one more patron than the previous episode. If you would like to become patron number 28, visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. I've got some quick picks at the top of the Internet Minute. New Lego for 2023
Surprise.
from Lego. I know. Look, you know what?
I couldn't help it.
They keep on releasing cool shit.
I know.
I don't know what else to say. And some of these are really pretty.
Check them out.
I'll direct everyone's attention to the dried flower centerpiece. But there's also a wildflower bouquet. The new Lego Jazz Club is the Lego modular build for 2023. A fun standout is Gandalf the Grey and Balrog in the Brickheads style, like the little like Funko Pop version that Lego has of their stuff. And then the Hokusai, I think I'm pronouncing that right. The Great Wave. It's their latest art piece. So similar to the Van Gogh Starry Starry Nights that we talked about, similar to things like the world map, there is the Great Wave. But the two standout for me are the Wildflower Bouquet. Sorry, not the Wildflower Bouquet, the other one, the dried flower centerpiece. And the unique thing about this, while it would cost you a pretty penny, because one of these is $70, and I would say, you're going to spend a lot on a centerpiece that would look similar from a retail store that is not Lego. It's just like dried flowers and you see these on people's dining room tables all the time, especially in the fall. And what's neat about the one from Lego is that if you buy 2 or 3 of them, they connect together. So right now it's kind of like a long, thin kind of flower arrangement, but it has a hinge in it. And if you buy several, you can connect them all together and it makes a wreath. So then you could have your own centerpiece inside of this Lego wreath, which it looks really cool. And at a glance, I don't know that you'd know it was Lego right away. Something I really, really like about it. I thought it was very, very cool.
Yeah, one of the photos actually shows it as a hanging on the wall, which is pretty.
Yes.
Pretty.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's pretty cool, but it's just pretty. It's just as you said, at a quick glance, you can't tell that it's Lego. It might look like an artificial plant that you'd pick up in a craft store or a key or something like that. But
that's exactly like the felt flowers and stuff like that you see around.
That's really nice.
Yeah. And then the other one, of course, is the Balrog and Gandalf. The fact that there's 2 figures for $25 Canadian, it comes out on the 26th of January. And Gandalf looks great, but the Balrog looks hilarious. He's got a little whip and everything, which I just thought was just super, super funny. He's all horns and head and flames, and he's got these little legs and little eyes and teeth. It's really well done. And I can imagine an aftermarket LED kit for the Gandalf and Balrog set for sure.
Oh yeah.
Little
especially
LED
pieces in the Balrog.
Yeah, like a little LED on Gandalf's staff, and then like you said, the flames and eyes and stuff for the Balrog would just be sick. That's such a fun set. But that's it. I just wanted to quickly mention all that kind of stuff. I won't go into all the details and the pieces and stuff. A
lot of them. That's good.
Yeah, there's a lot of these sets that either are coming out soon. For example, the dried flower centerpiece does not release until February 1st. but all of these
Hmm.
sets have been announced, and they're either out now or coming soon. And we'll have links to everything at
Yeah.
lego.com here in the show notes.
I mean, I teased you that you're doing Legos, but they always look so cool, and I just eye candy for sure. That Lego Jazz Club. I mean, it's if you're not buying the modular pieces, it's a kind of a huge investment for just one building. But this one, it looks. I feel like it looks quite cool. Like the actual name of the building down the front looks like it's really well done.
I liked the top part of that. I wasn't so crazy about the bottom. I thought the bottom blue didn't quite match what was going on upstairs. But like to each their own. They can't
Yeah.
please everybody all the time. But I've seen other modular builds where I think like, okay, that I can see is more of a standalone, like the bookshop, or there was one that was like a Parisian hotel or something like that. And I thought that, or a Parisian cafe. I thought that one was really good too. But yeah, they're definitely aimed at the people that collect these and have like a
Yeah.
town set up and whatnot. Because they are an investment, but they're also a very high piece count. So like it's 300 Canadian, but it's also 2,900 pieces. So
Right.
like you're getting to the point where you're almost at 10 cents a piece, and that's pretty good for retail Lego. You'll see other smaller sets that'll go at a much different ratio. So what's your pick this week?
For my pick, I kind of want to would like to give a bit of a shout out to the Sandlot. It's a family-friendly Minecraft community slash server. I've been meaning to mention it the last couple of times, but keep forgetting. But it's the first server my sons ever played on when they were little. They sort of wanted to get online and try some of the things that they couldn't do in a single player world, and play with each other and their friends. And it is a family friendly environment for younger players, free from swearing, abusive language, and mature content. It's created by a former teacher, or possibly still a teacher. I forget that part, but it's whitelisted. You have to apply to become a member, and they do a background check on every single person that applies to make sure that you haven't been basically you're not on any lists, that you haven't been banned from other places, because they do not want anybody on the server who might cause issues. And I used to play on there with them as well, and it was very warm. It's very welcoming. They've updated their games and their parkour courses in the last little while, and I think my sons used to play on it, then they took a break from it, but now they've gone back to it, and they really love the community that's there. And actually, my son's been recently become one of the official helpers on the site, so he actually welcomes people on when he's on, and he'll take them on mini tours of the place and let them know. And he's actually helped some people with builds and things like that. Not that I want to, not that I'm volunteering his time to help every single person with a build, but it's just such a cool place and a cool and safe place to have your kids start playing on a Minecraft server. So if any parents are out there with young kids and you've been toying with the idea of letting them on a Minecraft server, I'd recommend it. It's sandlotminecraft.com.
So you may not know the answer to this, but
Hmm.
late last year, Minecraft came out with a new chat reporting tool that was part of Minecraft, and it met with a lot of pushback from some of the more independent, Minecraft players, usually older. Do you
Yeah.
know if the Sandlot is using the player reporting tool, or they have their own sort of system?
I don't know. They've had their own very strict systems in place for a long time, because there was my sons would be in chat, and for whatever reason there was a thing on the Mac, or at least the Macs we were using in the operating systems when playing Minecraft. If you typed anything that had the letter A in it, then for some reason it saw you hitting A as Command A, select all. So when they would type AFK, it would do A, highlight the A, and then they would type FK, which is an abbreviation for the F word, and
Right,
they were
yeah.
totally not doing it intentionally. And so they just, by just putting in FK, that was strict. Their system's strict enough that flagged them and banned them for 24 hours. And so we had to and it happened another time, and we had to get in and say, look, this is what's happening with our operating system. Like, we've taken a video of it and sent it in saying this is not intentional. But I guess that's a really long way to say I don't know. But I don't know that they would necessarily need it anyway, because they've been just trying to keep that place as safe as possible for kids for a long time, and it's been pretty strict.
I mean, it would be there. If they're running Minecraft, they're running the chat reporting
Yeah.
tool, like it's part of the game. I'm just curious because what happens because you're talking about how they're very strict about if player has been banned or has issues in other servers, and they don't allow them to be part of Sandlot, and that's what the chat reporting tool does. It addresses a Minecraft account, right? So it doesn't
Ah,
matter
gotcha.
where you are if you're using your Minecraft account or a Minecraft account that you have paid for and logged in with, then if you do something shady, and we're talking like really not nice stuff, not just like being mean or silly. We're talking about, things that are illegal or, endangerment and stuff like that.
Right.
If you do stuff like that and you get reported and it goes through the system and you get banned, then you're banned from Minecraft, like account wise, not
Right.
just. So I'm just curious as to whether that would be something that the Sandlot might use in addition to it. From what I can tell, I would say people would probably get banned from Sandlot before they would get banned via the reporting tool, right? Because I feel like the
Yeah.
Sandlot rules are even tighter than say the reporting tool. And if folks are interested, they can check out the Spawn Chunks. Oh, I don't remember what episodes. It would have been like October-ish, around those times. We would have been
Right.
reporting on the chat report tool for like weeks at a time.
Yeah, the 1.19.1 was in?
I think so. So that might have been summer, actually, now that I think about that. But we did talk about it last year. You can search for chat reporting on the spawnshanks.com and you will find a couple of episodes where Johnny and I talked about it.
But this would be the kind of server that a 5-year-old could play on.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Then they would have a tighter ship than
Yeah.
the
Oh my
overall
goodness.
chat
Yeah.
reporting tool.
I
Yeah.
think my guys might have been either 5 and 7,
Wow.
or like 6 and 8 when they first started on the server. So it's it's such a good place.
That's going to be
So
trippy, when someone that young wants to play online. Like that has to be
yeah,
a very well researched decision, from your side as a parent, right? Like
yeah.
that's a
Read a number of forums.
yeah. I know much older kids that are still not allowed online,
Hmm.
in terms
Yeah.
of being online, unless it's like in a closed, not a public server, but like it is a private, like 2 or 3 player game. Like I think my niece plays some games online on her tablet with her friends, but those are the only people that she's playing with. She's not in a
Yeah.
public realm. It's just like they connect their games together in like a 2-player or a 4-player multiplayer situation. It's not an
Right.
online situation, so to speak, in terms of like who's able to connect in that way.
Yeah. No, it's good though. I mean, part of the stipulation of them being able to join was me joining with them as well, just to kind of have a look around and see. And so we played a number of times together, but then they just got quickly got better than me at the game, and so it was just like, okay, you guys, I'm good that it's safe. Go to town, and so they're much older now than when they first started, and I still love it there. So
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can get more information about the show and links to some of the things that Stephen and I talked about at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod, and you can email the show just like Smurf588 at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com or find the show by name on Twitter. Subscribe for free on your favorite podcast app. You can even find the show on YouTube. Word of mouth is the easiest way to support the show. Just tell a friend about the Citadel Cafe and where they can go to listen to it. My name is Joel Duggan. Everything that I am doing online can be linked to at joelduggan.com. You can also find the podcast that I just mentioned, The Spawn Chunks, which is all about Minecraft. Just recorded a brand new episode this past week with Johnny and talking about all things coming to Minecraft Legends on that episode. You can also follow me at Joel Duggan on social media and Joel Duggan on Twitch, where I stream at least 3 days a week, Lego on Fridays and Minecraft on Saturdays and Sundays. But so far, I've had 2 extra streams this week, so tune in. You never know when you're going to see me. Stephen, where can people find you online?
most often online, I can be found at twitch.tv/StephenESC, Stephen with a PH.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick 2.
Surprise.